Hi dear ones, welcome to teachenglish.com. +1 റിവിഷൻ പഠനം എങ്ങനെ പോകുന്നു? ഇതുവരെ തുടങ്ങിക്കഴിഞ്ഞില്ലേ? This is the right time to begin. Now you have enough time to prepare. അതുകൊണ്ട് എത്രയും പെട്ടെന്ന് തന്നെ തുടങ്ങുക. +1 ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലെ മൂന്നാമത്തെ പാഠമാണ് ഇന്ന് ഇവിടെ അവതരിപ്പിക്കുന്നത്. ലെസൺ ടൈറ്റിൽ Quest for a Theory of Everything. കിറ്റി ഗെയിൽ ഫെർഗ്യൂസൺ എഴുതിയിരിക്കുന്ന സ്റ്റീവൻ ഹോക്കിങ്ങിന്റെ പ്രൊഫൈലാണ് ക്വസ്റ്റ് ഫോർ എ തിയറി ഓഫ് എവറിതിങ്. സ്റ്റീവൻ ഹോക്കിംഗ് 1942 1942 ജനുവരി 8 ഇംഗ്ലണ്ടിൽ ജനിച്ചു. ഫ്രാങ്ക്, ഇസബൽ എന്നിവരായിരുന്നു സ്റ്റീവന്റെ മാതാപിതാക്കൾ. 8 വയസ്സായപ്പോൾ തന്നെ ഒരു സയന്റിസ്റ്റ് ആവണം എന്ന് കാര്യമായി ചിന്തിച്ചു തുടങ്ങിയിരുന്നു സ്റ്റീഫൻ. സെയിന്റ് ആൽബൻസ് സ്കൂളിലായിരുന്നു അദ്ദേഹത്തിന്റെ പ്രാഥമിക വിദ്യാഭ്യാസം. അക്കാലത്ത് സ്റ്റീഫൻ പഠനത്തിൽ മികവൊന്നും പുലർത്തിയിരുന്നില്ല. ഫിസിക്സിലും മാത്സിലുമായിരുന്നു അദ്ദേഹത്തിന് താല്പര്യം. പിതാവിന്റെ താല്പര്യപ്രകാരം ഫിസിക്സ്, കെമിസ്ട്രി എന്നിവ പഠിക്കാനായി ഓക്സ്ഫോർഡ് പ്രവേശനത്തിനുള്ള എൻട്രൻസ് എഴുതുകയും അവിടെ പ്രവേശനം ലഭിക്കുകയും ചെയ്തു. കോഴ്സിന്റെ തുടക്കത്തിൽ ഏകാന്തതയും വിരസതയും അദ്ദേഹത്തിന് അനുഭവപ്പെട്ടെങ്കിലും 2ാം വർഷത്തിൽ സ്റ്റീഫൻ ഹോക്കിംഗ് ഓക്സ്ഫോർഡ് ജീവിതം ആസ്വദിക്കാൻ തുടങ്ങി. കൂട്ടുകാർക്കിടയിൽ പ്രസിദ്ധിയും അംഗീകാരവും ലഭിച്ച സ്റ്റീഫൻ ഉന്മേഷവാനും വളരെ സജീവവുമായിരുന്നു. ഓക്സ്ഫോർഡിലെ പഠനത്തിന് ശേഷം PhD ചെയ്യാനായി കേംബ്രിഡ്ജ് യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിൽ ചേർന്നു. 1963 തന്റെ 21ാമത്തെ വയസ്സിൽ സ്റ്റീവ് ALS എന്ന അപൂർവ രോഗത്തിന് ഇരയായി. ഈ രോഗത്തിന് ചികിത്സാരീതിയോ മരുന്നോ കണ്ടുപിടിച്ചിരുന്നില്ല. 2 വർഷത്തിന് ശേഷം രോഗത്തിന് അല്പം ശമനമുണ്ടായി. ഭാവി അനിശ്ചിതത്വത്തിലായിരുന്നുവെങ്കിലും സ്റ്റീഫൻ ജീവിതം ആസ്വദിക്കാൻ തുടങ്ങി. 1965 അദ്ദേഹം സ്വന്തം നാട്ടുകാരിയായ ജെയിനിനെ വിവാഹം കഴിച്ചു. യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി പഠനകാലത്ത് പ്രശസ്തരായ സയന്റിസ്റ്റ് കൈകാര്യം ചെയ്യുന്ന ക്ലാസുകളിൽ സ്റ്റീഫൻ അപ്രതീക്ഷിതവും മൂർച്ചയേറിയതുമായ ചോദ്യങ്ങൾ ചോദിക്കാറുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അതുകൊണ്ട് ജീനിയസ്, മറ്റൊരു ഐൻസ്റ്റൈൻ എന്നീ പ്രശസ്തി നാമങ്ങളും അദ്ദേഹത്തിന് ലഭിച്ചു. 1980 അദ്ദേഹം പ്രപഞ്ചത്തെക്കുറിച്ചൊരു പുസ്തകം എഴുതാൻ തുടങ്ങി. അത് പൂർത്തിയാകുന്നതിന് മുമ്പ് തന്നെ ട്രാക്യോട്ടമി ഓപ്പറേഷന് വിധേയനാവേണ്ടി വന്നു. ശ്വസിക്കാനായി തൊണ്ടയിൽ പെർമനന്റായിട്ട് ഒരു ദ്വാരമിടുന്ന ഓപ്പറേഷനാണിത്. ഇത് ചെയ്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ പിന്നെ സംസാരശേഷി പൂർണ്ണമായും നഷ്ടപ്പെടും. സ്ക്രീനിൽ നോക്കി വാക്കുകൾ സെലക്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ സഹായിക്കുന്ന ഈക്വലൈസർ എന്ന ഒരു കമ്പ്യൂട്ടർ പ്രോഗ്രാം അദ്ദേഹത്തിനായി വോൾട്ടോസ് എന്ന കമ്പ്യൂട്ടർ പ്രോഗ്രാമർ വികസിപ്പിച്ചെടുത്തു. ഇതിന്റെ സഹായത്തോടെ അദ്ദേഹം തന്റെ പുസ്തകം പൂർത്തിയാക്കി. എ ബ്രീഫ് ഹിസ്റ്ററി ഓഫ് ടൈം എന്ന വിഖ്യാത പുസ്തകമായിരുന്നു അത്. ശക്തിയും ഊർജവും ചോർത്തിക്കളയുന്ന വൈകല്യങ്ങൾ ഏറെ നേരിടേണ്ടി വന്നെങ്കിലും പിന്നോട്ടു പോകാൻ സ്റ്റീഫൻ ഹോക്കിംഗ് തയ്യാറായിരുന്നില്ല. പ്രയാസങ്ങളെയും ശരീരത്തെ തളർത്തിക്കളഞ്ഞ രോഗത്തെയും അവഗണിച്ച് മുന്നോട്ട് ഗമിച്ച സ്റ്റീഫൻ ഹോക്കിംഗ് ഭൗതികശാസ്ത്രത്തിലെ അത്യുഗ്ര പ്രകാശമായി പരിലസിക്കുന്നു. നെക്സ്റ്റ്, summary in English. Stephen Hawking was born on 8th January 1942 in Oxford, England. At an early age, Hawking showed a passion for science. Born to Frank and Isabel Hawking, he had an ordinary childhood. But by the time he was 8, he was seriously thinking about becoming a scientist. In 1959, at the age of 17, Hawking went to Oxford to study natural science and to specialize in physics. Later he took a PhD from Cambridge, specializing in theoretical physics. At the age of 21, he contracted a rare disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It was a terrible disease. There was no known cure for this. In 1965, he got married to Jane. Jane liked his intelligence, eccentric and rather arrogant nature. Besides, he was interesting and witty. As a student in Cambridge, Hawking used to ask unexpected and penetrating questions to the most distinguished scientists. His reputation as a genius, neither Einstein, began in these Cambridge days. He started writing a book about the universe in 1980. Before completing that book, he had to undergo a tracheotomy operation. After this operation, he could not make any vocal sounds. He continued his work with the help of a computer program called Equalizer. This program allowed Hawking to select words from the screen. In 1988, he published his book A Brief History of Time. This book contains a number of paradoxes and unique ideas. Despite all the disabilities he faced, he became the supernova of the world of physics. He chose to ignore the difficulties caused by his crippling disease, and he expects others to adopt the same attitude. Points to remember from the lesson: Stephen Hawking was an ordinary English boy. He was slow in learning to read and write at school. His father wanted him to attend Oxford University. He decided to study mathematics and physics from Oxford University. He liked classical music, took part in sports, and was famous for his wit. He became popular and accepted by his friends. Meeting with Jane Wilde was a turning point in his life. She supported him throughout his life. He wrote a book to make science understandable to common people. A computer expert sent him a program called Equalizer. Hawking was an optimist. ഇത്രയും പോയിന്റുകൾ ഓർത്തു വെക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ എസ്സേ ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നതിനും മറ്റ് ചോദ്യങ്ങൾക്കും ഒക്കെ ഉപകരിക്കും. Previous exam questions. First question: Stephen Hawking has overcome his crippling disease to become the supernova of world physics. On the occasion of the release of a book on Stephen Hawking, you are asked to deliver a speech describing him to audience. Prepare the script of the speech. സ്റ്റീവൻ ഹോക്കിങ്ങിനെ കുറിച്ചുള്ള ഒരു പുസ്തകം റിലീസാകുന്നതിൻ്റെ സന്ദർഭത്തിൽ അദ്ദേഹത്തെക്കുറിച്ച് സംസാരിക്കാൻ നിങ്ങളോട് ആവശ്യപ്പെടുന്നു. ആ ഒരു സ്പീച്ചിൻ്റെ സ്ക്രിപ്റ്റ് തയ്യാറാക്കുക. സ്പീച്ച്. Honorable dignitaries, on and off the days, and my dear friends, good afternoon. On the occasion of the release of yet another book on Stephen Hawking, I am immensely happy to talk about him. Stephen Hawking has earned an international reputation as the most brilliant theoretical physicist since Einstein. He is an insightful, absorbing, and inspiring person of extraordinary courage who dared his challenges and the crippling disease with his strong willpower. His life and works bear witness to his brilliant mind. Hawking was not a born prodigy. Many a time he met with borderline results. At the age of 21, he was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It was devastating news for Hawking and his family. A few events, however, prevented him from becoming completely pessimistic. In 1965, he got married to Jane. Jane liked his intelligent, eccentric, and rather arrogant nature. Besides, he was interesting and witty. As a student in Cambridge, Hawking used to ask unexpected and penetrating questions to the most distinguished scientists. His reputation as a genius, neither Einstein, began in his Cambridge days. He started writing a book about the universe in 1980. Before completing that book, he had to undergo a tracheotomy operation. After this operation, he could not make any vocal sound. He continued his work with the help of a computer program called Equalizer. This program allowed Hawking to select words from the screen. In 1988, he published his book, A Brief History of Time. This book contains a number of paradoxes and unique ideas, and it is a groundbreaking work in physics and cosmology. His several books have helped to make science accessible to everyone. Despite all the disabilities he faced, he became the supernova of the world of physics. He chose to ignore the difficulties caused by his crippling disease, and he expects others to adopt the same attitude. Thank you. Next question. Write a short note on the role played by Jane Hawking in the life of Stephen Hawking. Jane Hawking played a very important role in the life of Stephen Hawking. He met Jane at the New Year's party in 1962 at St. Albans, just before he entered the hospital for tests. To her, Stephen seemed terribly intelligent, eccentric, and rather arrogant. When Jane met him again after getting discharged from the hospital, he was really in a pathetic state. However, she was not put off by his physical or mental condition. She was rather a shy teenager, serious-minded, with a strong faith in God ingrained from childhood by her mother, and a belief that good can come out of any adversity. Hawking admired her optimism, and their relationship developed slowly. After a while, they two decided to marry. For Stephen, that made all the difference. Marriage, Hawking would later admit, would give him something to live for. It also gave him a family to support and the need for a job. She brought a new ray of hope in his life, and he applied for a research fellowship at Caius, one of the colleges in Cambridge University. Next question, identify the errors and edit appropriately. Hawking was confident that he can get through successfully, but he ended up disastrously in the borderline between a first and a second. After reading this part, one can identify the errors. Was, can. Then in the borderline ഈ രണ്ട് ഏരിയകളിലും എറേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ട്. അത് എങ്ങനെ മാറ്റി എഴുതണം? Hawking was confident that he could get through successfully. Was past form ആണ്. Therefore, could. He ended up disastrously on the borderline, not in the borderline. It's of course a miracle that Hawking had been able to achieve everything he has, that he is still alive, says Kitty Gale Ferguson. Comment on the statement in 3 or 4 sentences. Hawking contracted to a rare disease ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, for which there was no known cure. It leads to a gradual disintegration of the nerve cells in the spinal cord and the brain. No one expected that he would live through. It's nothing but a miracle that he achieved the greatest position in the world of physics, defeating all the catastrophic physical problems. Next question, complete the passage using appropriate cohesive devices like otherwise, but, therefore, so, etc. This part is taken from the textbook. Answer. Frank and Isabel Hawking. Stephen's parents were not wealthy, but they believed in the value of education, so they planned for Stephen to go to Westminster, a famous school in the heart of London. Unfortunately, Stephen was ill at that time of the scholarship examination. Therefore, he attended the local St. Albans school. Even while facing adversities in life, Stephen Hawking realizes that he has yet to do many worthwhile things. Write a paragraph highlighting his positive attitude and willpower. Or, same question, same idea. Adversities in life cannot defeat a person of creativity and perseverance. Comment on this statement. Comment on this statement in the light of your reading of the profile of Stephen Hawking. Answer. Adversities in life cannot defeat a person of creativity and perseverance. With a reference to the life of Stephen Hawking, we all know how great a position he has achieved in the field of science. Adversities in life never stopped him from who he was destined to be. He was noted as the most brilliant person alive, and apart from being a notable cosmologist, he was an amazing person. Despite being affected with a rare disease, it was evident that absolutely nothing can stop him. Dr. Stephen Hawking believed that, however bad life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at. His life is a rich tale of success against adversity. While living with the devastating condition of incurable motor neuron disease for more than a half century, he made his mark as a great theoretical physicist and a celebrated author. He will always be remembered through his discoveries and amazing undying spirit. He is not only a motivation for beating death and disability, but is a classic example of great courage, intelligence, indomitable will, and positive attitude. Indeed, he is an inspiration to us all, particularly the people who have disabilities, health issues, and who go through unbearable levels of psychological pain. And they have a model to look up to, and he has truly taught us that the sky is the limit. Next, textual questions ആണ്. First question, how did Hawking startle the audience? Hawking startled the audience by telling them that there is an end in sight for theoretical physics. Second question, Stephen Hawking did not appear to be a promising choice to lead any adventure. Why? Hawking sat in a wheelchair while one of his students read out his lecture. His appearance was not healthy. He had contracted a neurological disease, so he did not appear to be a promising choice to lead any adventure. 3. Can a person be judged by appearance alone? Justify your response. A person cannot be judged by the appearance alone. There are many examples in history. Great men like Abraham Lincoln and George Bernard Shaw did not have a very attractive appearance. Question 4. What do you learn about Stephen Hawking's childhood? He was born in England on 8th January 1942. He had his primary education in St. Albans School. His parents were not wealthy. From the age of 8, he was seriously thinking of becoming a scientist. At the age of 17, he went to Oxford and began to study natural science, specializing in physics. Comment on Hawking's life at Oxford. For about 1.5 years, Hawking was lonely and bored at Oxford. But halfway through his second year, he began to enjoy Oxford. Question 6. What opinion did Hawking's peers at Oxford have about him? Hawking was popular among his peers at Oxford. They remembered him as lively, buoyant, and adaptable. He was famous for his wit. He liked classical music and science fiction and took part in sports. Question 7. Cite an example to prove that Stephen Hawking was sharp-witted. Did his wit help him in any way? Hawking had applied for PhD at Cambridge. He would get it only if he secured a first. But when the result came, he got only borderline marks between a first and a second. When the examiners called him for an interview and asked him about joining Cambridge, he told them that if he got a first, he would go to Cambridge, and if he got second, he would remain at Oxford. He added that he expected them to give him first. His wit helped him to get a first and joined Cambridge. Stephen's first year at Cambridge was worse than that of at Oxford. Why? Answer: his poor background in mathematics was a disadvantage. He found general relativity very tough. Hawking started getting clumsy in the third year. He had fallen twice for no apparent reason. He had a difficulty talking. How did tragedy strike Hawking shortly after his 21st birthday? Shortly after his 21st birthday, Hawking contracted ALS, a motor nerve disease, which caused a gradual disintegration of the nerve cells in the spinal cord and the brain. This was the tragedy. Question 10. What drastic change came over Hawking after the diagnosis of the disease? Before diagnosing the disease, he was rather confused about his dream. But after the diagnosis of the disease, he realized that there were a lot of worthwhile things to do. Question 11. What trait of Hawking's character do you note here? Here we note Hawking's readiness to sacrifice his life in order to save others. What was Jane's impression of Hawking? Just before Hawking entered the hospital for tests, he met Jane Wilde at a New Year's party at St. Albans. Hawking seemed terribly intelligent, eccentric, and rather arrogant. But he was interesting and she liked his wit. Write a note on the character of Jane. Jane was a shy teenager. She was optimistic and had a strong faith in God. She was in no way upset by the physical or mental condition of Hawking. Hawking liked her optimism, and this made their relationship grow. They thought that together they could achieve something good. He was able to get a research fellowship at Case. They got married in 1965 and they had 3 children. It was in fact Jane who gave Hawking the moral courage to overcome his adversity and achieve great things for mankind. How did Jane's optimism influence Hawking? Jane's words gave him confidence and he applied for a research fellowship at Case, one of the colleges in Cambridge University. Question 15. Is Stephen Hawking really a great mind on par with the likes of Einstein and Newton? Justify your answer. Answer. Of course, Stephen Hawking is a genius, but we cannot say that he is on par with Einstein or Newton. He has not made as many discoveries in physics as these great scientists. His considerable discovery states that all black holes will evaporate away over the course of trillions of years. But this is not an official discovery. Moreover, though he has got many distinctions, he has not won the Nobel Prize. Question 16. List the interesting facts dealt with in Hawking's book. In Hawking's book, he asks a number of relevant questions about the universe. Where did the universe come from? Is the universe infinite, or does it have any boundaries? Will the universe come to an end? Is there a complete theory of the universe? Is there a beginning of time? Could time run back? These are the interesting facts he deals with in his book. What could have been the misgivings of Jane? When Hawking was advised to undergo a tracheotomy operation, that is the removal of the windpipe, she had serious doubts. She doubted whether he would ever be able to breathe through his mouth and nose. Question 18. How could he overcome his difficulties after the tracheotomy operation? After the tracheotomy operation, his breathing was made possible through a permanent opening made in the throat. To complete his book, Hawking made use of a computer program called Equalizer, which would allow him to select words from the screen by the movement of his eyes. Mention some of the unique ideas and paradoxes put forward by Stephen Hawking. Some of the unique ideas and paradoxes put forward by Stephen Hawking are: things are not often not what they seem. Pieces that ought to fit together refuse to do so. Beginning may be endings. Empty space is not empty, and black holes are not black. These are the ideas and paradoxes put forward by Stephen Hawking in his book. Question 20. What was Hawking's attitude to his disability? How do you estimate it in a wider social context? According to Hawking, a physical disability does not make him psychologically disabled. One should concentrate on activities if one's physical disability does not become a serious handicap. He also claims that his physical disability has not been a handicap in his field of theoretical physics. Activities. Activity first, writing, can be seen on textbook page number 24. Question and answers are given here. Activity 2, timeline. List the facts you have learned about Stephen Hawking in chronological order in the timeline below. The timeline begins from 1942 and up to 2005. Question 2, in the same activity, now look at the list you have made. What facts do the readers expect in a profile? In a profile, we expect the date of birth, education qualification of the person, institutions he attended or she attended, marriage, achievements, special merits if any, recognition received if any, and plus the last point, his or her death, date of death. Activity 3, interview. Prepare a set of questions and conduct an interview with a person who has become successful in any field in your locality. Here, a set of questions are given. These questions can be used to interview any successful person. 8 questions are given. Try to remember or memorize some of them. Speech. Helen Keller. activity 4. Adversities in life should make you better, not bitter. Discussion. A few points are given here. Next activity, cohesive devices. Answers to the textual question is given here. Next activity, seventh activity, collocation.